What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new Gears 5 video, so let's get into it. So in today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about an interview that happened between The Hollywood Reporter and Rod Ferguson, the studio head of the Coalition. So let's talk about it. So Patrick Shanley, the one who wrote the article as well as interviewed studio head Rod Ferguson, tweeted out saying, "I sat down with Rod Ferguson, studio head of the Coalition, to discuss his plans to bring back the Gears of War franchise through multiple new games, an upcoming film from Universal, and a growing emphasis on esports." And if you click on the link to this tweet, it'll take you to the full article, in which reads, 5 years ago, Microsoft acquired the rights to a then dormant franchise, which had once been one of the biggest IPs in video games, Gears of War. Having sold more than 22 million copies and grossed over $1 billion globally, the Gears brand was once a marquee AAA series that helped make stars out of creator Cliff Bleszinski and solidify a pre-Fortnite Epic Games as one of the most powerful publishers in the industry. Following the original trilogy's final chapter, Bow, in 2011, however, Epic placed the title on the shelf, seemingly for good. Flash to 2014, and Microsoft breathed new life into the franchise with its subsidiary studio, the Coalition, then named Black Tusk Studios before adopting its current moniker of reference the government body in Gears lore, with Gears of War 4 in 2014. A reimagining of sorts, Gears 4 shifted the focus onto a new protagonist and signaled a return for what was once one of Microsoft's crown jewels. One of the things when we started Gears 4 was that we were a new team and only 4 of us had ever made a Gears game before. So we had to make sure to show fans that we know how to make a Gears game, Coalition studio head and creative director Rod Ferguson tells The Hollywood Reporter. We began this journey with Gears of War 4, and now I feel that we've hit our stride of Gears 5, he says. Part of my mission since 2014 has been, how do I grow the franchise and bring it back? Epic put it on the shelf to essentially die, so Microsoft brought it back. Not only are we trying to bring it back, we want to grow and flourish. Which I think, guys, before we even go any further, the fact that Epic Games put Gears of War on the shelf is mind-blowing to me. I have no idea why Epic Games decided to do that. Obviously now when we look at Epic Games, we think of Fortnite, right? But back in the day, we're talking going back 5, years or so, Epic Games just kind of totally stopped what the production of Gears of War. Now, there's a number of reasons why they might have allowed Gears of War to essentially die. Number one, you had Judgment that came out, which was not very well received by people. To me, it was like a Gears of War simulated game. It's basically what it was. It just felt so repetitive throughout the entirety of the story, and I just did not think that they did a very good job whatsoever with Gears of War Judgment. A core trilogy that when that came out, those 3 games were 3 of the best games I've ever played. I mean, it was an incredible thing, a beautiful trilogy that was put together, and I would have loved to see it continued. And obviously now we are having it continued right before our eyes, which is a beautiful thing. But the fact that Epic was just allowing Gears of War to kind of take a back seat is just mind-blowing to me, because obviously they have Fortnite, but they could also have Gears of War, and they could have a flourishing Gears of War as well as a flourishing Fortnite. I just don't see why they decided to completely shelf Gears of War before Fortnite was even completed or probably even thought of. Gears 5 has debuted to critical praise, currently sporting an 86% on review aggregate site Metacritic. Meanwhile, the mobile game Gears Pop hit 1 million players in its first week of release in late August. There's also the upcoming spin-off title Gears Tactics, a real-time strategy game based in the series' universe, a series of comics, a second novel, and of course a feature film in the works at Universal Studios, which Ferguson says he meets with producers on to discuss the script. That's incredible, guys, that we're talking, okay, you have Gears Pop. This is why Gears of War as a franchise is starting to absolutely flourish. I believe it's getting bigger and bigger every single year, but now we're looking with the release of Gears 5, which is probably the biggest Gears we've ever had by a long shot, and it's also, being very well reviewed, as well as it's having a lot of critical praise. On top of that, you have Gears Pop. You also are going to have Gears Tactics coming out. You have all these, we have a series of comics. You have, another novel coming out. You have the film that's going to be coming out. So the lore and the story of Gears of War is just growing and growing every single year, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, because there's going to be 2 more Gears games, because they're talking a brand new trilogy, which is absolutely incredible, which we're going to have a lot of videos to talk about as far as the future of Gears of War. But let's talk about right now. You have a feature film coming out from Universal Studios. Now, history has shown us, guys, that video games that are adapted into movies usually don't translate well. We have examples of like Assassin's Creed, Doom, Mortal Kombat, Max Payne. The list goes on, right? Could Universal Studios really rewrite that narrative that video games are just not good when they are adapted to movies? And I think it's possible. Gears of War is one of those games that I have always thought to myself that this could be a movie. It just all depends on how they do it and how they go about making the story. They got to make it a very gritty movie. They have to make it very, it's got to be very dark, and it's got to have, rich characters. The Locust Horde has got to be an absolute force to be reckoned with in the movie. I mean, there's just a lot of things there, and it kind of concerns me that, because I really would have loved to see what they were doing. Peter Jackson was going to be directing the Halo movie, which got canceled, of course, but it was going to be an R-rated Halo movie, and I would have loved to see that, to kind of see where, Halo, where that could have gone as far as a movie, because Gears, I feel, is kind of might have a similar feel, even though Halo is completely different from Gears of War. I feel that it would kind of be a little bit like the tone and such may be somewhat similar between those two, because Peter Jackson had said that he wanted to make kind of a dark Halo game, and I think that's what they're going to be doing with Gears of War. I also think that a Call of Duty movie, I would have liked to see a Call of Duty movie, because I think, guys, what we need is a kind of moving in a direction before we start feeling confident about seeing more of our favorite franchises as far as video games are concerned adapted into movies. I think we'd like to see more, a couple other, video game adaptations to movies that are really good, right? I think Call of Duty, because it's just a war game, would actually translate to a very good movie, I think. And then, you had a game, like, let's just say you had that come out, and then you, of course, had, a couple other movies come out. I know Warcraft, that was, like, very mixed. I thought that Warcraft was okay. I thought the graphics were good and such, but I guess the story of that they kind of followed in Warcraft was a lot of fans just didn't like it. But nonetheless, guys, I think that Warcraft was okay. But I think now you got to have a really heavy-hitting, good video game adaptation to a movie, and Gears of War very well might be that. There's also the ever-growing esports scene, of which Gears has carved out its own niche, though Ferguson sees the franchise having an even bigger impact in the future. We have simplified it down to this crawl, walk, run idea, Ferguson says, of his studio's approach to competitive gaming. Gears 1 Remastered was our crawl, but that game didn't have a lot of tools for spectating and how you swap the cameras, so it was a little hard to watch. When we designed Gears of War 4, we designed it with an esports viewer in mind. That's how we got to walk. Now with Gears 5, I'm not going to call my shot and say that we're running, but we're tying up our running shoes. And the esports scene, guys, of Gears, I think is going to be huge in the next few years. I would also say, guys, that I wouldn't be surprised if Gears takes a similar approach to that of what Call of Duty and Overwatch is doing, and maybe eventually will become a franchised league. I would love to see that, guys, just because we would have so much more content to take in as far as the esports scene is concerned, and I just love Gears of War. That's something that I would really like to see. When asked if he feels Bleszinski's absence, Ferguson demurs a little, he says. Though Gears 5 is now the second numbered entry in the series without Bleszinski's involvement, so the keys to the franchise are now securely in Ferguson's possession. When you spend 3 years making a game, yeah, you care about the game, but what you really remember is this time spent with those people collaborating and making cool shit, he says. The latest release is the series' most ambitious, introducing a new open-world dynamic to the franchise and utilizing multiple playable protagonists, including the series' first female playable character, Kate Diaz. Gears 5 is as much a major step forward for the third-person shooter as it is a satisfying next chapter. Ferguson credits Microsoft with allowing him to take risks risks with the Gears IP. The biggest freedom is the amount of trust that Xbox head Phil Spencer gives us. People expect this Microsoft overlord to come to the studio and say, "Thou shalt do this," but it's not like that, he says. We set our features, we set our date, and they look to us as studio heads to deliver. Still, it's not lost on the studio head how much responsibility Microsoft is putting on its shoulders, both for the Gears franchise itself and its potential to help bolster the number of the company's Game Pass subscribers. Right now, it's all about content for Game Pass, Ferguson says. Having these tentpole franchise helps ground what is the Xbox Game Studios. What makes Gears interesting to a company like Microsoft is the fact that we have an edge, that we say fuck, or the fact that you chainsaw monsters in half. There's a grittiness that gives it a bit more credibility in the gaming space, that it's not just all the shiny, polished things. And I love this interview. I love this statement by Rod Ferguson. This is what we need, guys, because look, there's a lot of people who love games like Fortnite, who love like the, happy-go-lucky kind of games where it's just, very bright and very exciting. It's kind of for everyone, right? It's for, adults, it's for kids, it's for, teenagers. But then there's also that other side of gaming that I love as well, and I've grown up with, gritty types of games that are only meant for mature audiences. And that is Gears of War at its core. This is a game that isn't for everybody. It's for those hardcore fans of the franchise. It's for people who love to run around, and just kill a bunch of locust horde and chainsaw a bunch of shit. And that's what we love about Gears of War, right? Call of Duty, another kind of mature game, right? A lot of kids play it as well. But what I'm saying is that I'm glad that Rod Ferguson, Microsoft, the Coalition, they're not moving away from the goriness of Gears of War. They're not moving away from the language and such, because it was built on that, right? We don't want it to change in a way in which it doesn't seem like Gears anymore. It's like, where a lot of us with Call of Duty, we felt when Advanced Warfare came out and then Black Ops 3 and then Infinite Warfare, we felt they are changing the way the game is. What made Call of Duty so great was a boots on the ground feel, a gritty tone, modern warfare, maybe a little bit futuristic warfare, or fighting like in the past, like in World War II, World War I, the Cold War, Vietnam War, that was Call of Duty at its core. It's not this super futuristic game where it's Titanfall meets Halo and then you've got Call of Duty. No, it's not supposed to be that. And that's why, the fans of Call of Duty were so upset about it. Well, with Gears of War, this is what I want to hear. As a fan, I want to hear a guy like Rod Ferguson saying, look, we're not moving in a direction where this is like kid-friendly, quote unquote. This is meant for mature audiences, and it's going to stay that way. E-League was had the invitational of Gears 5 that was on live television on TBS, right? And that's absolutely incredible, right? A very gritty, dark game put on national television. It's just one of those things that's amazing that the Coalition, Microsoft are all on the same page, like with Gears 5, but also moving forward into the future. I'm very excited about it, to say the least. And I hope you guys all are as well, if you are a Gears 5 fan or just Gears of War fan in general. Let me know what you guys think about this and about this interview in the comment section below. Subscribe if you're new, stay positive. And as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.